What was the creepiest experience in your own home? In a house living with my girlfriend and another couple. I'm watching TV at around 2 AM in the living room. Girlfriend is asleep, other guy is asleep, and I assume the other girl is out in her study, which you had to go outside to get to, so the back door is unlocked. From my vantage point you can see a portion of the kitchen, which is next to the back door. I hear the back door swing open, assume it's my housemate, and continue watching my TV show. About 15 minutes later, I happen to glance through the doorway into the kitchen, as I hadn't heard my housemate either leave the house again, or wander through to the bedrooms. House is quite loud, and there's a guy standing in the corner of the kitchen staring at me. He had a brown jacket on, dark eyes and dark hair, and was clutching a bottle of my Midori, shoulders slumped, staring at me. When he sees that I've noticed him, he moves. I get up from the floor and chase him to the kitchen, but he's gone. Carefully go out the back, nobody there. Out the front, nope. In the driveway, down the street, just nowhere to be found. Still gives me chills thinking about it. TL, doctor, man breaks into my house while I'm there, stares at me until I notice, then just disappears. Back in junior high, the first time my parents left town, and left me alone for a week. It's going good. I stayed in the basement and the entrance to the hallway that leads to my room had decorative beads hanging in the entranceway. I'm in my room watching TV with my faithful dog, Smokey, laying at the foot of the bed. All of a sudden he starts barking wildly. A bark I'd never heard out of him. Almost a cry. I think something is wrong with him, and just as I almost get a hand on him, he jumps off the bed and dives under it completely silent. I get to the floor to look under the bed for him, and I hear the beads in the entranceway start to rattle together, as if someone ran into them with a lot of force. I sit there scared shitless for a bit, then grab a bat and investigate. The beads are still swinging with force. Every door and window in the house is still locked from the inside. There aren't any air vents close to the beads, and Smokey refused to come out from under the bed for another 2 hours. To this day, I have no idea what caused those beads to rattle. I lived in a haunted house. Shortly after moving in, I had the feeling that there was someone behind me, particularly when I was cooking. A few months later, I rounded the corner and saw a man standing at the fireplace. I saw him clearly, but he was gone in an instant. I did some research and learned that the home had been built by this man, and that he died in the living room, next to the fireplace, of natural causes. His wife also died in the house years later, and it had been abandoned for 6 years prior to my purchase. They had 2 sons in that house. I felt the man continually, but I wasn't afraid. I had the feeling that he was curious or protective. Then I gave birth to a baby boy, and the ghost was present daily. I once heard playing sounds in the middle of the night coming from the nursery. The baby was too young to get out of his crib. Later, when my son started to speak, he asked who's the man who plays with me at night. Creepy. When my son was 2, he took what could have been a fatal fall, riding a wheeled toy down a very steep staircase that ended in a wall. I stood horrified, but midway down the stairs my son seemed to be picked up off the scooter and set down on the stair. The scooter crashed into the wall at the bottom, leaving a dent. I couldn't even speak, but I felt the ghost. The last event occurred when metal baker's shelves, stocked full of china and glassware, fell over in the night. The crash was tremendous. I rushed to the basement and saw the shelves lying down on the floor, but instead of scattered and broken china, each piece was neatly stacked on the concrete floor and nothing was broken. I sold the house for other reasons, but no one can live in it. There have been 6 owners in 9 years. Maybe they just need to tell George that was his name to leave them alone. He's not a bad guy. Actually wasn't really that scary. But one day I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was rotated 45 degrees in my bed, and I didn't see the red light of my TV, and couldn't feel the wall. So I freaked out, and thought I was being abducted. So the first thing that comes into my mind is to start screaming. Then my mom came walking into the room, turned on the light, and I could see I just was rotated 45 degrees in my bed. Edit, spelling. Real life issue, totally non-supernatural. Long before I met my wife, I started dating this girl who was fun at first, and then the crazy came out. I eventually broke it off. She kept calling and making up pretenses that we should get together. One night it was, I have some pictures I want to give you that were taken at my birthday. I told her I didn't want to see her and go to bed. I wake up in the middle of the night, sensing a presence in my room. I roll over to this dark figure looming over my bed and I start to freak. She's suddenly trying to comfort me, telling me she just stopped over to bring me the pictures. My terror turns to rage, and I tell her to GTFO. I follow her down and usher her out the door. I lived in the ghetto at the time, actually still do, just different ghetto, and always lock the doors. I have no idea how she got in, but fortunately never spoke to her again to ask how. One day about a year ago, I was brushing my teeth in my bathroom sink. I look down at the faucet and see a figure standing behind my reflection. I thought my hair was reflecting the dark shape, so I moved it back and turned around to see if there was anything there, and I didn't see anything. I go back to brushing my teeth and look in the faucet reflection, and the shadow has moved to the corner of my room. It's tall, like a grown man. It's black, but not entirely. It looked like it had been charred or burned somehow. I freak out and turn around. There's nothing in the corner. I'm freaking out at this point, so I hurry up and brush my teeth as fast as I can. My curiosity gets the best of me, and I look in the faucet reflection again. This time, the shadow is gone, but there is a black shape hovering over the rim of my bathtub, and a black shard hand with long fingers lifts itself up and then disappears behind the tub. I've got quite a few stories from my creepy house, if anyone would like to hear any more. I lived with my parents. I was about 16. My parents left me at the house alone while they went out of town. We were from a small town, and we had this one crazy old guy that was known as a peeping Tom. Anyway, 16-year-old me decided it would be smart to watch The Shining alone. I'm like quarter way through the movie and I go into the kitchen to get a drink. I look out the window and a face is staring back at me. I lose it. I dropped my drink and ran to make sure the front door's locked. It was. I looked out my front window and saw the old man walking down the road. After my wife had gone to sleep late on evening, I was watching a movie in the living room. I had turned most of the lights off, closed the curtains and the TV sound was turned down so nobody would wake up. We had some break-ins in the neighborhood, so when I heard someone at the front door, I freaked out a little. When I went to look, nobody was there. I went back into my seat and almost nodded off when I heard the door handle on the garden door move only a meter away from my chair. I walked to the window next to the door to peek out the window and saw 3 guys at the door, ski masks on, and one of them had a crowbar in his hand. As soon as they saw me, they bolted out the garden, over the fence. I slept very lightly that night, with a baseball bat and phone by the bed. Creepy Thanksgiving. We used to live in a rural community that was so safe that we never considered locking our doors. One Thanksgiving, though, my daughter and I decided to play with our holiday routine and drive to town for Chinese food. We were a good distance down the road when we both turned to each other and shook our heads. Something felt so wrong that we turned around, drove home, and locked every door in the house. That evening we tried to enjoy our Thanksgiving Chinese food. We really did. But there was something intensely wrong. It felt like there was something outside the house. Suddenly the entire house shook, as if someone had exploded a bomb just over our house. Seconds later there was a second blast that nearly shattered our windows. We jumped up and ran outside, but there was nothing there. I can't tell you how hard it was to peruse the rooftop. I did not want to see what was up there. We went back inside and locked all of the doors and began calling neighbors. What's interesting is that we later discovered that the blasts came from 2 Aurora aircraft. More interesting, every single one of the people we talked to complained that there was something messing around outside their homes just before the Aurora skyquakes. Sometimes it was on the roof, sometimes it was in the trash cans, and all of the neighborhood dogs were hiding, not barking, hiding. A few years ago, I was living in a house with my brother and 4 or 5 other people. He had just finished his shift at Applebee's and got home around 2 a.m. No one else was in the house. We had all gone out drinking, so he was alone in a dark, 100-year-old house. He put his iPod into its speaker/dock and went into the kitchen to get a drink. Suddenly he hears a noise. It's a low, not quite growling sound, but definitely organic. It stops. He hears it again, this time higher in pitch, with the sound fluctuating slightly. He slowly creeps through the house, trying to find the source. Every couple of seconds there'd be another long drawn out noise, sometimes low pitched, sometimes high pitched. Eventually he started wondering if a sick/dying/rabid raccoon had somehow gotten through a window and was in someone's closet. He grabs a broom for defense and keeps tracking the sound. Eventually he's able to narrow it down to either his bedroom or the room across the hall from his. He stops and listens. He hears the sound again, this time definitely coming from his own bedroom, where he was just a few minutes before. He lunges through the door, whipping the broom around Donatello from TMNT. Turns out there was a MP3 of whale songs on his iPod, and he had accidentally hit play on shuffle mode when he placed it into the speaker/dock. Still though, can you imagine hearing whale songs in your dark house at 2 AM?